My name is Nguwi. I'm going to take you through this particular presentation on career guidance. If you've got any questions, you can put them on the chat so that I can answer those questions as we go through this particular presentation. I'll be admitting other people who will be joining this particular session. A bit of background on myself. I'm an occupational psychologist, so I'm going to talk directly to parents, people who are, or guardians who are looking after kids and they are concerned about the careers that these children must take. Very important for every parent to understand what we are going to be covering. So as a parent, there are quite a number of issues that I want you to take note of as we go through this particular presentation. Here's one quotation that must make you think and probably reflect on you as a parent and what you can do to help your children. Choose your parents wisely. The above is a response given by an eminent child psychiatrist, Michael Rota, when asked what advice you would give to a child growing up today. He said, choose your parents wisely. The importance of this particular quotation is that parenting is a crucial determinant of a child's long-term success or life chances in anything that, or what we call life outcomes later in life. So it's important for every parent to understand this. So parenting, I'll show you why parenting or the home environment is so crucial for career development. I'm giving you a bit of background so that you understand, because when you look at career guidance, we are guiding someone through making choices about what to do in terms of career. That it doesn't just start when someone goes into A-level or someone goes into O-level. It really starts at a very early stage. That's why parenting is actually very crucial in this whole process. Okay, here's a study that was done in the UK in terms of whether it's generalizable to our own situation. I think so. We can also do our own local studies to invalidate or validate this particular study. You will notice that if you look at this particular study, you will notice that the effects of early childhood and education and care in the development of people who are 2 years or between 2 years to 5 years, what is called early childhood intervention. It was produced by Early Intervention Foundation in the UK. You can see there on this particular table the impact of the home environment. The home environment is that color there. So let's start from left to right. You will notice that the environment in the home environment plays a very big part. The mother's educational level also plays a part. Last night with the heated debate on Twitter whether the education level of a parent does play a part in the development of a child, especially their verbal reasoning ability. There is evidence to show that the mother's educational level, but they spend more time with the children, but we do know now that they are also child minders in the home environment, but the mother's education, you can see the impact there. The number of siblings, you can see the negative impact. The more siblings you have, it has got a negative impact. Limit setting for the child in terms of the environment. Parent-child closeness, it has got a positive impact. Then home learning environment in the home. Do you have a learning environment for your children? It's got a positive environment there, positive impact. Area deprivation in terms of setting boundaries, it has got a negative impact. The authoritarian parenting, a negative impact. Some people think that when they are authoritarian to their children, it will help them develop. But you can see scientific evidence shows the opposite. It doesn't necessarily mean it will affect the children completely in a negative way. Here we are just looking at the environment. Remember, there are other factors that actually affect the cognitive development of a child, which we'll talk about later on. Is child female, positive, mother's age also has got an impact. Then informal child care, which is your relative or a friend, has got a positive impact on the children. So if you look at all this, as a parent, you must then be able to say to yourself, where can I enhance or improve so that my children can develop in a better way so that they gain cognitively, even in their own personality development. So these are the key factors that you as a parent would need to be aware of as your children are growing up. These are important factors for you to take into consideration. They will have an impact on the cognitive development of the child. They will have an impact on the personality development of the child. So you can't ignore them. Although last night, some in a Twitter argument, some were arguing that they grew up with very poor parents who did not go to school and things like that. What I then asked them is that a trend or an exception? And also, is that a fact or is that an opinion? Because there is no scientific evidence to show that if you grew up with poor parents, it is going to affect your cognitive development. But here we are really focusing on what science says. That's what we are going to be focusing on. So when you look at cognitive development, I have already explained there, so I don't need to repeat. This is what is in that particular graph. But when you look at career guidance in an environment where it's given professionally, it must be evidence-based. And evidence-based means that you must have some form of evidence in what you're assessing. Careers, before you give someone advice in terms of career, especially children, you need to make sure that you understand the level of general mental ability that they have, or what other people prefer to call cognitive ability, which is basically your verbal, numerical, abstract, spatial ability, and mechanical reasoning, which also include language usage and critical thinking. Then their personality need to be matched the jobs that they want to, or career that they want to pursue. Their interests and values are all important. But in practice, what I have noticed that sometimes you don't have a complete match in terms of these factors. You may find that these factors are actually not matching, and I will explain as we go through this particular presentation. Let's look in detail a bit about what is involved in each one of these factors that we are talking about. For example, when you look at cognitive ability, it's comprised of the ability to think, the knowledge, which is basically the store of true and relevant knowledge, and the intelligence use of that knowledge. So intelligence on its own, you are looking at really about the ability to think and find solutions to problems. That's what you're talking about. And a lot of people really refer to IQ. IQ is just a scale usable to show intelligence or cognitive ability levels. So it has got an average of 100, which is the British average anyway. Then cognitive ability can be measured by psychometric tests, as I will show you as we go through this particular presentation. I'm highlighting cognitive ability because I will also show you the importance of cognitive ability in terms of career choices. That's why I'm giving you this particular background. So what can you do, what you can do to increase the cognitive ability of your children, taking again from the home environment that we looked at, you need to make sure that there is better nutrition for the children. High quality free school lunch, including meat. Remember, long back when we were going to school during our time, we get milk, free milk. Sometimes you get lunch, and also health programs that deal with parasite control, clean water, toilets, family education, e.g., education of parents. It will help in terms of reading to the children and more books for the children. So if you give more books, you read to your children, you are likely to get better outcomes in terms of their cognitive ability. Preschool education, your crèche and kindergarten are also important. They're very crucial in terms of cognitive development. School education, better educated teachers. There is actually recent evidence that shows that I know a lot of people have been arguing about the size of classes in Zim, for example, as a major issue in terms of the quality of education that we then get in the country. But there is recent evidence that shows, even if you go to What Works, you may find this evidence there. It shows that it's really not about the size of the class, it's about the quality of the teacher that actually impacted the education system in terms of the quality of output. Yes, the quality, if you've got a smaller class with a poor teacher, it doesn't really add any value to the classroom. So the quality of the teacher, if you go to most of the developed countries now, they're focusing on better educated teachers as a driver of quality of education that people then get. Then the discipline in the education system, efficient instructions, objective tests and exams, all these are important. Then linking advancement to ability, which is selection of university students based on ability tests. If you look at our university selection system, sometimes there's no consistent way of selecting people. The criterion for entry can be varied. But if you are going to go and join MIT and Harvard, they only don't look at your A-level results. They will look at your cognitive ability, your natural ability in a number of areas. Then it's also important to note that health lifestyles also do impact on cognitive ability. For example, no smoking, few alcohol, both in the home and also for the children concerned. Then there's also cognitive training, which can be done in early childhood education. If you look at the Germans, they do this very well. You can actually look, there is actually online cognitive inductive training that is offered, which you can take advantage of as a parent. So IQ is determined by partly genetics, which is largely hereditary. Some give percentages around 70 to 80% hereditary, and partly childhood experience. So there are two aspects there, hereditary and partly childhood experience. So those are the key factors there. So if a 70% for argument's sake is largely hereditary, which means, but no one knows which genetic factors actually do explain the differences in cognitive ability. But we do know it's actually cognitive, it's hereditary. What we do know, like I was explaining in the previous slide, is that the home environment, the nutrition, all those do play a critical part. If you look at my second slide, I showed you what actually in the home environment tend to affect the cognitive development and the personal development of children. Okay, so the home environment, so as a parent, you can really influence in terms of how the cognitive development of your children by working on the intervention that I have already talked about in terms of the environment. Okay, but when you look at now career choices, there is, like I indicated at the beginning, there are a number of areas that you need to look at. We talked about interest, which is the motivation and desire to work in a particular area. It doesn't matter how bright a person or how personally suited a person is to a particular career or a job. If they have no interest in that area, they will not give you any value. Then cognitive ability is also extremely important in the sense that if you go back to jobs, you'll find that cognitive ability roughly explains about 40 to 65% of the performance in a particular job. So it can't be ignored. That percentage alone is huge. But also a very important factor is that there's no there's no point in someone having an interest in an area when they have no cognitive ability, given the research that shows that most of the job performance can be explained by cognitive ability alone. A large chunk of more than half of that is explained by cognitive ability. But also remember, as a parent, the more complex a job is, the more cognitive ability is required in that particular job. Yes, effort can be a factor. Greater effort can be a compensate for lower cognitive ability, especially in lower and less complicated tasks. But as you go into complicated tasks, you find that cognitive ability becomes even more important. Personality is also important. The personality tends to really affect the motivation and the willingness to exert a certain amount of effort. It's linked also to your interests. So matching personality jobs can result in some of the most satisfying and useful kinds of personal growth in a particular job. You'll find those are the big five. There's a big six, what is called honesty and humility. I'll briefly explain some of the factors that you need to, when agreeableness is a factor, one of the big five personality factors that you need to be aware of. When someone is highly agreeable, it means they are very friendly, they're less prone to conflicts. Someone who is very friendly and they can compromise, less argumentative. Those who are highly disagreeable tend to be argumentative, sometimes for no particular reason, and you can already tell what kind of profession these kind of people will be suitable for. Then conscientiousness, which is basically diligence. Conscientiousness has been found to affect performance in all jobs, basically, but the more important is you go into higher level jobs. That's conscientiousness. So it's a very important factor. If someone is not highly conscientious, it means they will have to be pushed to get things done. Highly conscientious people get organized, they do their things on their own, self-starters, they get organized, they plan ahead and get things done. Then openness to experience, look to how conservative someone is in terms of their thinking. So are they subject to, or they are more inclined to follow tradition, or they are more likely to accept new ways of doing things? That's the openness to experience. Extroversion, how sociable, how outgoing someone is, their jobs. For example, if you're going to be customer interfacing, there are some roles where you would need to be really an extrovert to be able to sustain that. It doesn't necessarily follow that an introvert can't do that particular job. They can, but it also means they have to exert a lot of effort and be conscious of their own environment. They may actually get frustrated in that particular environment. Then neuroticism, How emotionally stable is someone in that particular role? Highly neurotic people tend to be more aggressive, they tend to be temperamental, they're subject to mood swings and things like that. Many other factors that are facets in that particular neuroticism. Then honesty, humility. People who are low on honesty, humility also tend to engage in corrupt activities or unethical behavior. So all these factors do play a part, but in practice, we find that there is a mismatch in what people want to do and also their personality, their career choices. We have already talked about the interest. So what role can a parents play in the career of a child? Very important question that a lot of people have been asking. We know because some parents are authoritarian, some parents would want to really be on top of the situation. So what they do is they actually dictate everything to their kids. If you look at research, this is really not encouraged. What is encouraged is be a supportive onlooker and cheer your children and be a source of advice, but only when asked. That's what is important. At a very early stage of the child's life, you need to be really very careful that you are not going to foster a particular career when someone is in preschool, when someone is in primary school, or even when someone is in high school. What you need to do is to open opportunities for them. You need to be offering a number of activities. For example, parenting is largely a matter of offering many varied activities as possible to your children and watch how they respond to those activities. Okay? You are basically fostering a constructive gene-environment correlation. That's what they say in psychology. When children have exposure to many activities, their preference progress in those activities reveal their genetic inclination. So what we are saying is expose your children. They may be in primary school. That's why you find some schools, they take children for trips so that they can explore. Some have also started taking children into certain environments. Maybe it's in a hospital environment, a manufacturing environment, a teaching environment, so that they can understand what kind of environment it is. They can make their own choices in terms of what they will be comfortable in terms of actual career interests. Don't foster the careers that we have as a parent, because in most cases you find if the parents are doctors or teachers, they would want their children to go into those areas because they've done that. If you look at most families, you will find that if your family has got teachers, you find that probably 70 to 80% of the people in that particular family are in that particular profession. So your role as a parent is not to dictate what the child must be doing, is to understand their strength in terms of their cognitive ability, which I will explain later on in detail, and also in terms of their personality, in terms of their own interests. You foster the right environment. So that's what is crucial for you as a parent. Okay, so parents can offer relatively more of the activities for children. Where children struggle and avoid activities, parents can infer genetical influences in those weaknesses in those children. For example, you may find the child is not really interested in very complicated kind of stuff. It could be an issue that there is already a weakness, an apparent weakness in that child, or they don't want to do with physical things. It also could be an issue. But don't rush to make conclusions. Keep on, after a certain period of time, I'm sure you'll be able to tell whether the child has got certain weaknesses in those particular areas or not. But you don't rush to make those conclusions. Okay. Okay. So, given that jobs are changing, should career guidance counselors point children to specific areas? There is better around the world in terms of what should be done in this particular area. This shouldn't be necessary until it's no longer appropriate to call someone a child. Okay. At that stage, I'm sure they will be more mature to understand what they need to do in their own career. That's why I was emphasizing from very early on, what you need as a parent is not to say, go and be a teacher, go and be a doctor, or go and be an engineer. What you want to say is, do I understand the strength of my children in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of their interests? Are those interests developing in terms of their own personality? Is there any particular inclination? Because remember, childhood experience matters in terms of personality development, in terms of cognitive development. So don't interrupt that. Expose your children to as many activities as possible. Let them play games. I will show you some of the activities that are required. Let them play games. Read books to them. Expose them to many activities. Many challenging activities. That's how they can then be able to explore on their own. Okay, so what should parents do early to enhance the IQ or the cognitive development of their children and subsequent life outcomes? Talk to your children. Listen and respond constructively as the children talk to you. Very important. I know parents don't want children to ask questions. You know, in our African tradition, we don't want our children to ask us questions. But it's actually a bad way of parenting. You want children to be inquisitive. You must encourage your children to challenge. Even yourself, you must encourage your children to question, why are we doing this? Why is it necessary? Ask them what they think about things around them and how their days have been. And listen and respond constructively to them. Offer them choices about activity. For example, if it's lunchtime, if you are going to cook a dinner or lunch, you must go to them and say, what would you like to eat today? This kind of exploratory kind of questioning will encourage them to also do the same as they explore what they encounter in life in general. Even young children can be allowed to to make choices. When you set behavioral expectations and punishment, explain why you are doing it, ask questions and try to answer those questions. Where you don't know, you must tell them you don't know, and you must look for answers together so that they know if you can't find answers, there is another way of exploring and finding those answers. Okay, so, and also let them see you working on to figure out something out. Offer them as much variety. I've already talked about this. It's very important for you to do that. Can parents shape the personality of their children? I've already highlighted this. This is basically through reinforcement, through reward and punishment, creating the right environment for the child. It's all childhood experience. Please, it's very important to note that once your children are now in high school and things like that, it will be very difficult for you to change the personality or alter the cognitive trajectory of that particular child. It may be too late. And if you look at most African governments, they invest in post-5-year education, especially higher education, but they don't remember that roughly about 80% of the child's brain develops before the age of 5. So if you look at that, you may see that it's actually important for government to invest in preschool education. Although there are mixed findings in terms of the impact, most people think the home environment, or most research evidence think the home environment is actually more crucial than even preschool education. Research done in different areas, economists, psychologists, and educational researchers, has shown enduring effects of early education having an impact on cognitive development, on school achievement, on personality and success in adult age. These are all important facets. This is all scientific evidence. You can also go and research on your own. There's plenty of evidence. Most governments, especially with the UK government, New Zealand, they've got sites where they are actually looking at public policy, and they've got researchers actually doing hands-on research in these areas. And that's why it's very important. Some parents have also asked me questions related to cognitive ability. Is it really stable, this cognitive ability? Yes, it is. It is very stable. Cognitive ability is very stable. Cognitive ability tend to be highly stable. Just to look at some of the examples, studies done by Allen and others assessed intelligence at age 8 and 18 and found the test-retest correlation of 0.7, which is very high. In another study on intelligence test was given at age 4, 14, and 29. The test-retest correlation at age 14 was 0.6 at adulthood, and it was also 0.8. This is Thompson. At least 50% of the variance in late life cognitive performance can be attributed to childhood cognitive ability. So you can see there is a lot that you can do as a parent in early childhood to make sure that you develop the cognitive ability of your children. So when you're doing career guidance now, these are some of the tests that you can use. Others use different tests. For example, we look at verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning, abstract reasoning, mechanical reasoning, spatial ability, language usage, perceptual speed and accuracy, and critical thinking. What I want you to take note of here is that these particular cognitive ability can have got certain career paths that people who score very high in those areas can actually go into. For example, people who score very high on verbal reasoning, which is not necessarily the ability to speak English, because there is a test for language usage. But this is not the ability to speak English, but the logic in what you write and say. And people who score very high in verbal reasoning tend to go into fields like law, management, marketing. Those are the career areas that they go into. Numerical reasoning, this is your maths, and this really takes you into the sciences if you're very high numerical reasoning. Abstract reasoning, which is non-verbal reasoning. For those that have not seen this test, it's really lots of shapes where you need to look at how things are rotating in space, three-dimensional objects and things like that. Abstract reasoning is some prefer to call it a measure of raw intelligence. People who have got very high abstract reasoning tend to do extremely well in the sciences. Abstract reasoning tend to then determine the direction in terms of your mechanical reasoning and your spatial abilities. They tend to be related to all these abilities. Then language usage and verbal reasoning. Those who want to do law, most of the time they score very high in language usage and verbal reasoning. Then perceptual speed and accuracy is required in all the in all the fields, in all the careers. Critical thinking. Out of all these careers, you'll find that critical thinking is one that can be taught. There are lots of courses if you go to on the internet teaching critical thinking, LinkedIn Learning, Audacity, and many other free learning platforms. They offer critical thinking. It's a very important area in terms of people who have got very high critical thinking tend to use evidence when making decisions. They think beyond the here and now. These people who have got very high critical thinking, it can be taught even as an adult. It can be taught. The unfortunate part about cognitive ability is that once you are in adulthood, it's very difficult to then improve cognitive ability. If there's going to be an increase, it's going to be marginal, a marginal increase in these particular areas. So one of the key areas that I normally find parents struggling with is if someone is getting into Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, which areas should they focus on? The key issue here is once your child has been tested through these tests, the advantages, you will then know whether they are a science person or a non-science person, which means they can go either commercial or social sciences. People who score very high on abstract reasoning, numerical reasoning, mechanical reasoning, and spatial ability tend to do very well in sciences, and that can be picked very early. So if you're a parent and you find that your children have got very high science-oriented abilities through this, it's better for you to invest in that particular area early. It doesn't necessarily mean they must not then do the other subjects. They can do those other subjects, but you already have some form of a path that you want to encourage in your children once that is clear. You may find that someone struggles with numerical reasoning, abstract reasoning, mechanical reasoning, spatial abilities very early, and they're very good in verbal reasoning and language usage and critical thinking. Those people must go into commercials. Those people must go into social sciences and all the arts and other areas because of that kind of ability. What is crucial to understand at this stage is that when you look at this kind of abilities, they are different from what the people get in their O-level results. Sometimes you can get someone with a B or an A who comes and fails verbal reasoning, but they've got a B in English or an A in English. It does happen. Remember, when people are writing their O-level or A-level, the main emphasis most of the time we find people are reading in order to retain knowledge, in order to pass. Then after that, everything disappears. But these tests do measure natural ability. They measure natural ability. If I wake you up midnight and give you a numerical reasoning test, if you've got that ability, you must be able to pass that particular test. If I give you verbal reasoning, it's the same thing. So that's what normally happens. So sometimes when you do career guidance testing and you give feedback to parents, say, but this person has got an A in English. Why are they getting 50% or 30% in terms of their performance on the verbal reasoning test? It does happen. It happens like that because they have used a lot of effort. Remember, when they are passing their O-level or A-level, they also an element of effort. But it's better for your child to go in an area where they've got a natural inclination, to perform in that particular area. That's why it's very important. I'm sure you have had situations where you have got your children who go for O-level, they get straight A's. They got A-level and get E's and D's and O's in A-level. It's simply because they worked very hard, they were pushed very hard to pass at O-level, but they have no natural ability in those particular areas. You can get someone who gets straight 9 A's, straight to 10 A's, but there is an area where they've got probably a particular strength. That's why this test will then tell you these are science areas. This child is a science-oriented person. This one is a art or a commercial oriented child. So these tests are actually extremely crucial to understand, and this can be done very early to understand. But when you do this test, you are not pointing the child in any particular career to say be an engineer or be a teacher, be a lawyer. No. We are just saying these are the areas of strength. Let me invest in them. Imagine if you as a parent to know early There are also other tests. I do not have those tests. There's other tests where they can actually do this in primary school, where they will know this person has got very high abstract reasoning, they've got very high special ability. It's very likely that they've got an inclination towards the sciences. If you know that very early, you can invest wisely in your child. There are parents who have been disappointed with kids who go up to A level, only to go and get 1 point after wasting 2 years of education there, and also very expensive schools there, hoping that the child was going to pass. It's simply because they've taken the child into an area where they have no capacity. If you take your children into A level and you know exactly what areas they've got capacity in, it's very unlikely that they will fail, especially unless they then have got a health problem or other family, really high impact family problems. In most cases, they won't be able to fail. We've already talked about personality, okay? And the interest issues, we have talked about that, and how it's related to careers. On the interest side, we've got what I call realistic environment, investigative environment, artistic environment, social, enterprising, and conventional environment. This is a self-report kind of instrument where individuals can give you what their preferences are. You then match the interests, you then match the personality, you then match the cognitive ability of the child to that, to the careers that they want to go into. And this, don't do it very early, the matching in terms of interest, in terms of personality, in terms of cognitive ability. Remember, interest can change as the child gets more exposure to different areas. That's why at the beginning I was highlighting that you must let your child be exposed to so many activities so that they can make their own choices. Sorry. There's a question here. We wish you had known this early. So what does a person do if they have done a degree and they discover the program is not the most suitable one? I will answer that later on. Let me just go to the end of the presentation so that I can then take questions. Okay, so these environments, the environments, for example, realistic environments require manual or physical activities. There are some people who are really interested in fixing things, mechanics and machines, dealing with the equipment. They go into this realistic environment. Then there are some who go into investigative environment where these are mostly scientific professions, your physicians, biologists, and technicians. All these things, researchers come out there. Then artistic environment, these are occupational environment, requires working with or through various media to express oneself. These are artistic occupations, actors, musicians. And some parents get disappointed when their child shows an interest to being an actor or a musician. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no point in taking a musician and say, go and be an engineer when they have no interest and probably have no cognitive ability or general mental ability for that particular area. Then social environment, this is really nurturance, an environment where the individual likes helping others, teaching, providing a service. Those who work in an environment that requires warmth and nurturance, schools and hospitals, charity organizations, these are the social environment. Then the enterprise environment requires coordinating the work of others. This is really management, control, and influence. There's some people who really love and enjoy doing that kind of work. Then the conventional environment requires working with numbers and comparing and proofreading, computers, editing, and all those things. They go into the conventional environment. Very important for you to understand this. We talked about the O-level choices. I think this is where most parents probably get lost. Just to re-emphasize this again, that most parents do take their children on the wrong path, because they don't understand the strength and ability of those children. If you look at them, so many psychologists who offer this kind of service. It's actually better to invest in a test that costs you 100 years or 40 years than to spend 20,000 years taking someone into A-level or whatever amount into A-level and then they fail. Then after failing, you are back to square one. That's when most of the parents come back and say, can you do career guidance testing for my child? I want to see what areas they've got strength in. It's too late. They've wasted 2 years already. It's actually better to do it early. Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, those are the times that you must then have. If it doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it in Form 2, Form 4, or Form 5 or Form 6. You can still do it, but the earlier, the better. In most cases, if the test actually indicates that your child has got a very high numerical reasoning, abstract reasoning, and spatial ability, it's very unlikely that child will fail the sciences. It's very unlikely that the child can fail the science, because this is natural ability that we are talking about. I had an occasion where I tested an O-level child for some parents. When they came, what then came out is that on the numerical reasoning, for example, the person scored around 50%, which is basically better than 5% of the national norm group for people at the same level. When I gave them feedback, I said, "Look, this person must not do anything where must not take a career where they've got to have maths, where there's lots of calculation that require a lot of numerical reasoning." They then said, no, this person has got a B at maths. Fortunately, the child then responded and said, "You know what? Yes, I got a B at maths, but I struggled. Remember, I wrote 3 times. I had to get private tutors to get to this B. And this B is not mine, in quotes. This B is really effort and a lot of struggle." And if you then take that child with a B in maths, that where they went through a lot of struggle to get that B, and then say, go and do accounts, go and do economics, go and do anything that requires numerical reasoning, you are just wasting their time. It's very unlikely that they're going to pass. This is why most parents are disappointed to find that a child passes very well in A level. When they go to A level, they fail or get very low grades, and they subsequently fail to go to university. And also, for A level choices, I don't know why parents then do this. If you want to be a lawyer, just as an example, if you want to be a lawyer, what do you need? For most law schools, you find that they require English. I don't know whether they require English now for O level. For A level, sorry, they used to require a B, at least a B at O level. So if someone has got a B at O level, what you need at A level now is to get the number of points. So why would you want that person to go and do economics? And when you know it's very difficult, it needs some form of very high critical thinking, very high numerical reasoning. And that person then goes to do divinity, Shona, and economics. They get an E in economics and A's in the other 2 subjects. They can't be a lawyer, you see. So sometimes you then look and say, go look at the requirements for the universities and say, how do I maximize the points for my child? By understanding the areas of strength. Give them those subjects where they've got those areas of strength. They hit the points, 15 points, they go and do what they love. That's what is crucial. So most parents will waste money. So a typical assessment that you can do is something like what I'm showing you on the screen here, where you may find, for example, here, this person has got, basically on the cognitive profile, there's no particular strength if you look at it, okay? Very low on the sciences there, on the areas where, on your numerical, abstract, mechanical, and spatial ability. These are the areas that can take you into the sciences. The very low ability there, below 25%, which is the red zone there. Then you go to verbal reasoning, slightly below average, what we call the average range. Okay, but would you take this person to be a lawyer? Yeah, with a lot of effort, yes, but naturally not. Okay, perceptual speed and accuracy they've got. Like I said, this is an area is required in every year. Spelling, yes. Language usage, you can see this person can't be a lawyer, but language usage below 10%. So that already brings a problem. You do get people who have no particular cognitive area of strength. You may find that these people like this, you may find the solution when you come to their career interests, where probably this person is a more of an enterprising or a conventional environment where they need to use machine and tools. They take them to vocational training college. Don't take them to university if they're like that. It doesn't necessarily mean they can't do it, but you need to invest a lot of effort, a lot of encouragement, a lot of social support to support the child, so that they can perform. Remember when people go to university or A level, they are going to compete with some people who are really geniuses. They're going to compete with people who are not going to read, put any effort in reading, but they'll still pass. And they may actually get demoralized because they will think, why is it that they always get to the bottom of the class? Because they've taken them to the wrong class. That's basically what we are saying there. So the cognitive profile is the most important part here, because without a cognitive profile, it's very difficult for most of the careers. You can't be an actuary, you can't be an engineer, you can't be a mathematics teacher, you can't be all those things. You can't be a lawyer without certain prerequisites in the cognitive arena. So the backbone, the foundation is the cognitive ability. Even if you go then to career competence profiling, you'll notice that the cognitive profile is the foundation of everything. Without a particular area of strength in these particular areas, it's very difficult to advise anyone in terms of career. But there are certain careers where you don't need a lot of cognitive power to do those careers. Yes, they can go there, but also it's better to know. Imagine if this profile was someone in Form 1, Form 2, and you already know this is their profile, what kind of advice would you give them? Would you allow a parent to then invest in a lot of sciences? I wouldn't. But it doesn't necessarily mean they must not do it. They must do it for exploratory purposes and also for purpose of learning. But then that is not the area of strength. Then career interest, we already talked about all these areas. Then personality, you can see in this particular sample profile, this person is highly conscientious, but also highly disagreeable. That service orientation speaks to agreeableness, highly disagreeable, and all the other areas are in red. Also, a problematic personality profile in terms of career-wise. But remember, conscientiousness is not related to any particular career in terms of choices. It's actually required. It's a mandatory that someone is highly conscientious for them to be able to do it. But we know in our normal distribution, we want to be able to get people who are all highly conscientious. So the personality profile, this personality profile must match with the interest there in the cognitive ability. But in cases where there's mismatch, I would most of the time my advice defaults to cognitive ability. What is the area of strength? Can we look at the area of strength and their own interests? Okay, sometimes you also find a mismatch. Where there is a mismatch, the child must be encouraged to explore more in terms of career. Are there any other career options? Give them career options and choices so that they can explore those areas. So that's basically the report that you get, but obviously with more detail, that shows you what areas of training. If anything is in the reds there, we normally encourage you to really think again and say, what would be the best areas for my child? Here is what Einstein said. And I want you to take note of this particular statement, He said, I want to oppose the idea that the school has to teach directly that special knowledge and those accomplishments, which one has to use later directly in life. This is, if you want to read the book, it's called The Ideas and Opinion, page 62. Okay, he went on to say, the development of general ability for independent thinking and judgment should always be placed foremost, not the acquisition of special knowledge. If a person masters the fundamentals of his subject and learn to think and work independently, he will surely find his way. And besides, he will better be able to adapt himself to progress and changes that a person whose training principally than a person whose training principally consists in the acquiring of detailed knowledge. There is no summary that is better than this for anyone who looks at the future of work. Okay, there's no summary that is better than this. What Einstein is saying is, as you look at the careers for your children, I know most parents will look at how much money they are going to earn and things like that. But remember, if you base your career choices on the base of money, salaries, remuneration do fluctuate depending on demand of those skills and many other factors. For example, this coronavirus is going to alter the remuneration framework, and some certain careers are going to be in demand, others are not going to be in demand. Some others are going to disappear. Like what they say, about 50% of the current career jobs are going to disappear by 2030. Look at that. So what Einstein is saying, which I totally agree, which I have been preaching for all these years, is that you must then aim to develop the most cited skills for the future. Your child must have the mental elasticity and complex problem solving skills, critical thinking, creativity, people management skills, interdisciplinary knowledge. You're an HR person. Do you know finance? Do you know other areas? Do you know procurement? These are the things. There's nothing more than this. So I'm not going to give you and say this child must be in this particular. For example, if you look at some of the top careers that you can look at, besides obviously those in the medical field, for purposes of money and those who end up being specialists, there are careers like data scientists, people who are doing artificial intelligence, engineers working for organizations like NASA, lawyers, and those are some of the top careers, but they're not going to be top careers forever. If an individual has got some of these skills that we are talking about, these skills, all these can be learned, depending on your cognitive capacity foundation. All these skills can be learned. That's why you'll find, I was talking to a friend of mine who is now a very top director somewhere in the region, HR director in the region. You know that person's background, the person is an electrical engineer. Okay, that person is an electrical engineer. And this electrical engineer is the HR director for top companies in Africa. This electrical engineer. So they were not rigid, like Einstein said. They had acquired interdisciplinary knowledge. In actual fact, when they did their graduate traineeship, they did engineering, then went into HR as part of the graduate traineeship. They had a lot of interest in HR. They started learning HR, and they are now top. You can imagine the amount of firepower, cognitive firepower that comes from that particular person. And I know in the banking sector, when I trained as a banker initially, I know people who had done agriculture, people who had done religious studies, people who had done BA, people who had done biochemistry, who actually trained as bankers. That's the flexibility that we're talking about. Don't put your child in a box and say you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be this. let them explore. That's why I'm saying the exploration must go on through the rest of your life. At any stage, you can change your career, as long as you've got the mental elasticity and complex problem solving, as long as you've got critical thinking, as long as you've got creativity, as long as you've got people skills, as long as you've got the capacity to acquire interdisciplinary knowledge. Those are the key issues that you must look at. Let's look at some study. This is the Economist Worldwide Educating for the Future Index. These are the countries that are doing extremely well. If you want to look at the education system, Finland is at the top, Sweden, New Zealand, Singapore, Netherlands, Canada, Switzerland, Australia, Germany, Japan. Even if you look at the coronavirus, these are the same countries that have done extremely well. If you look at the cognitive average cognitive ability in these countries, they are again the top 10. These same countries are the top 10, and they're doing extremely well in those areas. It's not a coincidence. It's because of those things that we've been talking about. Okay, the unfortunate part is if you don't take an interest in the career of your child, they default into what they see every day in life. They default. Look at those. They default. They end up being politicians, and I won't say much about that. And also remember, stable career paths are gone. That's why you find the countries like Sweden, Singapore, they've got a different model of education that actually prepares people for jobs of the future. That's very critical for you to understand. Thank you very much. I will now take questions. I'll now take questions. You can put your questions on the chat, or let me see how I can get you the people to those who want to speak. Okay, they have got Noreen. Let me unmute. Noreen, yes, go ahead.
But I wasn't raising my hand, remember, I was just giving a pam for what you're saying. Okay. But maybe I'll just say, I think I've listened to you before speak about careers, and I still find it interesting, and I still come back, maybe as a parent, also as a practitioner. It's a commonly neglected area, like you did mention. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I'm sure there's been a video that's been circulating on WhatsApp. I think it's a father in Zambia who thrashed the child, over a failed scripted school. Mm-hmm. And the argument that has been coming out on social media is the parents spend a lot of money, so this child should have passed. And, that's the same argument we're talking about here, that parents always spend a lot of money on you, but parents would have spent a lot of money on the wrong side of things. So like you did mention, an assessment costs less than the cost of education. So I think assessments are the way to go for parents.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Noreen. And any other question?
Hi, Memory.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Just a comment. It's Diana here.
Yes, Diana.
When you are looking at, when I just listened to you when you spoke about career guidance at an early age. However, when you go in and you start looking at your education system and your children spend a lot of time in class, how then do you marry the education system in terms of shaping the careers of your children?
Okay, a very important question. But what I also want to say is, you're asking me something that we were discussing with someone a few days ago. They wanted their child. The child is so much interested in music. Okay, and what I then I referred them to one of the top-notch teacher in music. The person is not working for anyone. They're actually just focusing on teaching people music. Okay, so you can see there, you need to break out of the school system if you want your child to get the best of what they are capable of doing. There are so many people, anything that you can think of. If they are very good in sport, there are private people who are offering private lessons on sport. Be it golf, be it tennis, music, anything that you can think of, they're actually private people who are doing that. If they are highly computer literate, there are even other across the globe sites and the platform that offer any type of education that you can think of. If the person wants to be an investor and they really love finance, they can start very early. There are platforms that are actually teaching preschool children how to actually deal with the money. So that's the right way to go. Don't be constrained by the rigid school system. During the holidays, take time and explore those areas. And again, I want to emphasize, don't be rigid and say, I wanted to do music, I wanted to do tennis, I wanted to do golf. As long as they are not an adult, allow them to explore. They will find their path by way of encouraging, by way of exposure. If you think they love music, take them to a music concert and see how they react. Take them to some music lessons. Did they like it? After a few lessons, you may find actually they are now taking the initiative on their own. My advice to you would be outside the normal classroom, you can do a lot as a parent.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. When we are looking at an African context where that luxury is not there, to say that there's alternatives, I can take my child to a music school, I can take, and some of our children are coming from very poor background. Then, because that's in the majority, the minority might have those luxuries. What is it that we can put in place that is practical when you're looking at your township children to be able to assist them?
Let me unmute Svela. Svela, are you there?
Hello, hi, Memory.
Yes.
I think he was saying his connection is a bit poor.
Oh, okay. I wanted him to because Svela is in educational psychology, isn't it? So
yes, he's an educational psychologist.
He's an educational psychologist. Long back, they still have the school psychological services, but I'm sure it's poorly capacitated. They used to actually provide all these services that you are asking for now. But if you go to private schools, they do have educational psychologists who are actually giving this kind of advice. But I do see your concern. A poor African child. Yes, Noreen.
So I just wanted to make a comment, especially on the poor African child. I think one of the things that you will not, if as parents we have taken time to understand what they are calling the updated curriculum, it does, try to give children the exposure around all these things. You'd see that music is now, they've got a whole, like a festival that they do, which is musical, and it starts at school level. You guys do your vacation, and it's actually in the school curriculum, and it has to be done by every student. So I think in a way, even though our education system for the poor may still be a bit behind, but I think there's been an acknowledgement of the need for the exposure that you have been talking about, where music is now being done by every learner in a school. Physical education is being done by every learner in a school. So I think they're also trying to broaden the exposure. Of course, it might not be as much, but I think there's a level of trying to broaden the exposure. Just maybe this is out of from someone who has probably just studied a bit on the systems for other reasons, but not entirely. So I think there's an attempt, but it's not sufficient, of course, but there's been an attempt. So it is different from the days you and I went to school, where the only thing we knew was maths and English. Now they talk about music, they talk about all these things, even in the school setup.
That's correct. But also, just to add on to what Noreen is saying, you may find the parents think if someone then has an inclination towards music, the irombe, basically in Shona, they don't know what they're doing. Then this is when parents then force them to do certain things that they have no interest in, or in some cases they will do things that they have no capacity for. So these are some of the challenges that you then find with the parental advice. But very crucial for us to, as parents, I would want you to go back to, I think it was my third or second slide, where the What Works UK was looking at the environment and what is the implication of the environment that the child grows in. Very crucial. If you can refer to that slide more frequently, I'm sure you learn a lot from that. Any other question? Okay. If they
I have a question, Memory.
Yes, Mrs. Go.
Okay, I was just thinking that is there room in our curriculum where children get attachments so that they make a decision which professions they want, maybe long term? I understand Arundel School does that. During the vacation, you are attached maybe to a hospital if you are interested in the medical field or engineering with some engineering firm. Maybe there could be such a scope at an early age to attach children so they make the right decisions.
Yeah, I've heard the story. There are plenty of stories even on YouTube, some even on TED Talks, where you find that a child wants to be a doctor and they're just taken one day to be in a hospital theater or in a hospital environment. After that, they say, no ways. There's no way I can survive this. Then you don't end there. Maybe they're 11 years. At age 17, you take them again. And they will make their choices very, very clear. But the point that you are raising is very, very, very important. But what I have also noticed that some parents, what they're doing is that they're taking that initiative on their own, where they talk to a company and someone wants to say, I want to be a psychologist, they come and get attached to us, for example. Someone wants to say, I want to work in a mental hospital, they get attached to Nguwi as an example. Then after that, you may find their perspective changes. We have got an opportunity to expose our children to whatever is of interest to them. If you look at it, even here in Zim, we do have that opportunity to do that. And I think let's encourage the participants, the parents to do that. I totally agree with Mrs. Ko. You had also written, secondly, you talked of the 5 personality types. I've noticed that people in certain environments tend to be agreeable oriented, because if you question, you risk being fired. How do you get information across people seeing there are just 15 participants? So yeah, agreeableness, remember, personality is almost an enduring disposition. What tends to happen is if someone is highly agreeable, they will show that throughout a lot of situations. If they're highly disagreeable, they may agree with you, but these are the same people who, when they go outside the building, they will start saying, they're talking a lot of nonsense, they don't agree. They agree with you in the executive meeting. When they go out, they say, the person is crazy. It also shows that form of, yes, personality can be subdued by the environment. You moderate who you are simply because of any particular environment. It's a very important point that you raised there. Okay, any other question? If there are no questions, thank you very much.